Well, the next part is disk defragmenter. Defragmentation is basically used to defragment the disk. So, what is fragmentation? Fragmentation is like you already know that the disk is having tracks and sectors available, and the data is stored in tracks and sectors. Sometimes you store, let's say, a file of 100 MB, and then you try to store another file of, let's say, 2 MB, and then the third file again of, let's say, 10 MB. So the space allocated will be first 100 MB, then 2 MB, then 10 MB. And now let's say you delete the file of 2 MB, and now you try to store a file of 5 MB. So where this 5 MB file will be stored? Some portion of this 5 MB file will be stored in the space which was vacated by 2 MB file, and the rest of the portion, the 3 MB, will be stored after the file which consumed 10 MB space. So the file is scattered over the multiple sectors, which may or may not be contiguous in location. So, what is the shortcoming of that? What is the implication of that? The implication is like whenever you need to read a file, the disk movement increases. You need to move from track and sector in the contiguous locations to non-contiguous locations. The head movement will increase, which will increase the seek time as well as the latency time of the disk reads. So to minimize these seek and latency times, what we need to do, we need to store the files in the consecutive locations. So this disk defragmenter tool is basically used to do that purpose. So what it will do, it will look out for the scattered files and then try to relocate those scattered files to the consecutive memory locations. So how you can perform this defragmentation? You select this defragmenter tool available in the computer management, and then you select the disk you want to analyze, and then click on the analyze button. So currently, since this disk was empty, so you don't need any defragmentation. Otherwise, in the report, it will show that this is the volume size, this is the cluster size, use space is this much, free space is this much, and then it will show the fragmented space, like where your files are scattered over the file system. So since this volume is not having much data, so it won't require this thing, and even this one is not requiring anything. So here are the fragments of the files, like this one, then these are the different fragments. Fine. And then you can perform a defragmentation by clicking on this defragment button. So this shows basically the defragmented part, and in this, the red portion shows the fragmented files, the blue portion shows the contiguous files, and the green portion shows the unmovable files, which are basically sometimes the system files, and white space shows the free space. So you could see here estimate disk usage before the defragmentation and estimated disk usage after the fragmentation. So when you defragment your disk speed is obviously going to increase. So this fragmentation we discussed is called as external fragmentation. And besides this external fragmentation, there is also one more concept called internal fragmentation. So internal fragmentation is like we have a block size or cluster size of, let's say, 128 KB each, and you need to store a file of 64 KB. Now in one block, you could store only one file. So a block of 128 KB storing 64 KB of data will eventually lead to a wastage of another 64 KB of the space where no other file is going to be stored. So to overcome this internal fragmentation, what we do, we decrease the size of the blocks or the clusters. So instead of having a 128 KB block, why not go for a 64 KB block, so that whenever you have a 64 KB of data to be stored, it fits exactly to the block size and there is no wastage of space. So that's the optimal thing. but sometimes it's not advisable. The reason for that is whenever you need to increase, you decrease the block size, the number of blocks will increase. And when the number of blocks will increase, you will need more address space to address those blocks. And when you have larger address space, then searching and sorting the files in the larger address space takes becomes a time consuming process. So the disk performance will go down, whereas the storage capacity will increase. So you have to do a trade off between the two, like what is the block size, ideal block size. Like if you have the larger, more number of larger files, then you should go for a larger block size. And if you have more of the smaller files, then you should go for a smaller block size. So, and then this disk defragmenter tool is always there to help you.